Good evening. My name is Evan Gregory, and this is Bible Answers. We're going to be looking at, we're just going to be spending a few minutes, and I got a few thoughts, maybe random, may not be even connected together on the subject of politics. And so we're going to be looking at what, maybe getting some guidance from the Bible in regards to that realm. And as always, this is brought to you by the North Columbus Church of Christ. We are located in Columbus, Mississippi, and our website scrolling below me is northcolumbuschristians.com. And so, if you are an American, if you've probably been living under a rock. If you are not, or at least don't see a glimpse of what's happening in politics today in this country, and it seems like everybody has an opinion on it. Whether that's good or bad, that's a whole nother conversation in and of itself. But it seems like everybody has an opinion on it, and really, I think social media today does just well, for one, everybody, we see where people can be or sarcastically called experts. The Facebook experts, so to speak, is that everybody can easily, or at least, or think that they can become an expert on just a snippet of information. And so people uh, just online just tend to be more opinionated on these subjects, and there is more information for everybody to obtain as well. And so, uh, and I guess with also with leaders and the political platforms, they have become, I guess you would say, more radicalized over the last several decades. I guess you could say more so in the last decade or so. But what should a Christian think about that? What should when they are maybe making a decision about maybe who to vote for, or what to how to view those of differing political opinions. What should we think about that? And so again, we're just going to make a few little points about this, and what the Bible has to say. I will say, and a lot of people will say, well, Jesus would think like me in regards to politics. If someone, say, for example, if they're a staunch Democrat, they would say Jesus would follow the Democratic platform, and list off some of the things that Jesus would approve of, and would vote supposedly vote for. Same thing with the Republican side. And so both sides, left and right, Democrat, Republican, they all vie for the religious vote. They all vie for the Christian vote. And so, my first thought along with that, and it's always kind of comical to me, uh, when you see such things written or things said about, Jesus would do X, Y, or Z in regards to government, or he would vote for this person, or he would advocate for this party's policies, is that really Jesus has made his a political statement, and I think I don't have it listed on the screen here, but Jesus, when asked about whether or not it's lawful to pay taxes to Rome, he says, "Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's; render unto God the things that are God's." We also see, I believe it's in Peter and with Paul, that they simply tell us to submit to the governing authorities, not submit to the governing authorities that you like. They say simply submit to those governing authorities, and that's all that we have in regards to how we should, you know, as far as their political ideas, and any insight on what they would do. They don't, they don't advocate for any type of overthrow of government or aggressive policies, or anything of that nature. So we do have to keep that in mind. There's very, very little said in regards to the political realm in the New Testament. And so Christians really need to be careful when they, when they get into these types of conversations. And you really have to be mindful when you're getting into conversations with people that are of different political beliefs, and also that they may also have different religious beliefs as well. And so I thought I would just offer those 2 cents. I don't think that, honestly, I don't think Jesus would be a Republican or a Democrat. He was not involved in politics, and so I think if we get off onto that footing, thinking that Jesus would vote a certain way, I just don't. I think we're getting off on the wrong foot from the get go. And so again, going along into this lesson, Romans 8, verses 5 through 8, it says, "For those who live according to their flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Because the carnal mind is enmity against God, for it is not subject to the law of God, nor indeed can be. So then those who are in the flesh cannot please God." Paul's not talking about governments. He's not talking about anything of that nature right here. He's contrasting those that are in the spirit versus those that are in the flesh. Basically, those who are saved and are not saved. And so he says that those that live according to the flesh, those that are basically living, according to their own desires, that's what they live for. Those that live according to the Spirit, those that live according to God, they have their mind sits on the things of the Spirit or things of God. But notice what it says basically in the middle there. It says, "For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace." Notice what it says there: to be carnally minded is death. The carnal mind is enmity against God. So it is against God. It is an enemy of God. And it says that it's not subject to the law of God, nor indeed can be. So then those who are in the flesh cannot please God. So we have to be very, very sure that we're not carnal, that we are not in the flesh. And a lot of times when we look at this now, again, the context of what Paul is talking about, I think he's contrasting those that are believers to those that are not. And so again, I think that's the context here, but we also have to consider and think about, okay, we have to be careful that we're carnally minded. Who can be carnally minded? Is that just unbelievers? And so we'll look at that here in a moment. Here, again, we have these contrasts that are listed in that section of scripture. You think about the flesh versus the spirit, the law of sin versus the law of spirit. Being carnally minded versus spiritually minded, and in the flesh versus in the spirit. So we see those contrasts there, okay? That if one is in the flesh, if they're carnally minded, no good is going to happen to that the end thereof is death. But we see that life comes from being spiritually minded, being in the spirit. And so again, when we think about this subject of carnal mindedness, okay, are only unbelievers carnally minded? Is it possible for Christians to be carnally minded? And so what we see in 1 Corinthians 3 is very clear that Christians can be carnally minded. It says, "And I, brethren, cannot speak to you as to spiritual people, but as to carnal, as to babes in Christ. I fed you with milk and not with solid food, for until now you are not able to receive it, and even now you are still not able, for you are still carnal. For where there are envy, strife, and divisions among you, are you not carnal and behaving like mere men? For when one says, I am of Paul, and another, I am of Apollos, are you not carnal?" So Paul's writing to the church at Corinth. And now what we have to be clear here is that when they're writing to a church, to a particular location here, they're not talking about uh, writing to a particular church building. Okay, they're not writing a letter to the such and such church at on such and such street, and then they just kind of mail it to the building address, to the building of that church. That's not what's being said here. When something is addressed to the church, it's addressed to individuals, or in this case it would be a congregation of individuals that meet together there in Corinth. So he's addressing the people in that church, and he says that y'all are still carnal here. That you should be able to handle more difficult things now. More not just the basics. Here he says, "I fed you with milk and not with solid food." So basically you should move on from elementary principles. And he says, "Where envy, strife, and divisions are among you, are you not carnal and behaving like men?" So he says that they are acting like this. They are acting in a carnal manner. Okay. So and here they're saying, "I'm of Paul, I'm of Apollos." Apparently here, there were these kind of groups of people within the church in Corinth that some, for whatever reason, they would prefer Paul, others would prefer Apollos. Maybe it was because they were, Paul, through Paul's preaching, that they were converted, and maybe they claimed to be followers of him. Maybe they just prefer one or the other. And Paul, if you keep on reading that chapter, he shuts all that down. He says that Paul and even Apollos, all they are just preaching. They're all just teaching the word, and they're nothing. They're nothing special in and of themselves. But the main point here is that these Christians can still be carnally minded. And, some things to think about with these Christians here. One question I have is, can they remain carnally minded? I would think so. As long as there's still envy, there's strife, there's divisions among them, they would still be acting carnal, and so they can remain carnally minded. And so, going back to Romans 8, what happened if one remains carnally minded? Well, Paul is very clear there that a carnal mind is enmity against God. And so these Christians, if they remain in that mindset, this carnal mindedness, nothing good is going to happen from this. Remember, for to be carnally minded is death. So these Christians here, they have to get rid of that. They have to repent. They have to get rid of that carnal mind and put on that spiritual mind. And so I say all that, and again, the topic here is on politics. Is that when we are dealing with politics and Christians are talking about politics, it's very easy to have this carnal mind, that they're focused on the things of the flesh, not minded on the things of the spirit, and that because of politics, envy, strife, and divisions can result. We know from what Paul said to Corinth that we cannot ever have any of that. And if we are doing that, we are being carnally minded. So if we are getting involved in politics, we have to be very careful how we deal with that with other Christians. And we also have to be mindful of how other Christians, or how it would affect how other Christians view us. And so, you know, a lot of times when people become Christians, they think that it's almost like, well, the hard part is over with. We made this decision, and we can just coast into heaven now. And so, or at least at some point they would think that maybe they can just ease off the gas a little bit. They don't have to be so concerned with what they're doing or how other people are looking at them. But as Christians, we're always having to be concerned with our reputation, how others view us. Now, I recognize that if one is a faithful Christian, that the world is going to view them negatively, period. But they're viewed negative because of their faith and their stand in the faith, and not because what president they voted for or what political party they're affiliated with. So these things that are just minor issues, in the grand realm of things. Again, we have to be careful that we don't allow those things to get in the way of how people view us, and how people view the gospel, and how people view the church as well. So I have a couple of pictures here, and I'll have a couple of pictures from I think basically the exact opposites of the political spectrum. Here we have a guy. I think this was a picture from the Mississippi State Capitol, and I just put my face on him. But just think about, if you were scrolling through Facebook and you saw me at the, let's just assume this is a Mississippi State Capitol, since it has this guy's carrying the old Mississippi State flag. Just think about, what if you were scrolling through Facebook and you saw me, or that was my profile picture. What would you think about that? Or if you were walking past the Capitol and you happened to see me there, what would you think about me? And then the exact opposite here. If you saw me at some protest, I don't know what it may. Maybe we're protesting ICE. I don't know what it may be. But if you happen to see me partaking in this protest, I don't know. Maybe I'm throwing stuff. Agitating cops or whatever it may be. And maybe you see me doing this on Facebook, or maybe you just happen to be walking by this protest and you happen to see me. Just think about what would you think about me? What would you think if you saw another person that you had a large amount of respect for? What would you think if you saw those pictures of them in public? What would you think about me in either of those pictures? Would you think about me in a more favorable light or a less favorable light? Maybe it would be more or less favorable based upon what political party you're part of, maybe. But would that, if I saw those pictures, would you think, man, that guy's a real Christian? I need to go talk to him about the Bible. I need to go ask him questions about the Bible. Would that be your initial thought there? Would you tell me to keep on doing what I'm doing? Maybe you keep on telling me to keep on at the state capitol, or tell me to keep on protesting. And so, if we're looking at these things as Christians, again, how do we, how is what we're doing going to, again, this is not those politics, those protests, whatever it may be. Those are not the end goal as Christians. So, again, we have to be careful. Now, I'm not saying that you can't ever engage in politics whatsoever, but I'm saying that you have to be careful with how people are going to view you in that light, if they so happen to see you again on social media or just out in the street. And so, in my personal opinion, if I would say on social media, as Christians, keep the politics to a minimum. And I've had people tell me that they run, they're running businesses, and they would advise their employees, or the people that they work with, that they would advise them to say, hey, keep the politics to a minimum, because if potential potential sales, potential clients come in, they see those politics, they can be put off by that. And the same way can be for if they're lost people that are scrolling through Facebook, that they may see those pictures and they can be put off by that as well, and you wouldn't have the opportunity to teach them the gospel. And so, again, just a few things to consider here. And also, whether or not we like political candidates do kind of skew how we can feel about their morality. Maybe if we like our particular candidate and we see where this person is engaged in some wrongdoing, maybe we will kind of gloss over that. Here, this was a poll from 2016, and it said, "Do you think Donald Trump has a strong moral character?" And if you notice, amongst all registered voters on the top there, 66% said no. Okay. The next line, it said white evangelical Protestant. So 44% of the white evangelical Protestants said yes, Trump had a strong moral character. And if you went all the way down to no religion, 18% of those people said yes, that Donald Trump had a strong moral character. And so again, we're not talking about Trump and whether or not he's a good guy or not. But one thing that I'm here and trying to point out here is you do see the very stark contrast between even those that would be considered religious and very strongly religious versus those that are not religious. And that we see where people's worldviews and I would say their political affiliations also skew whether people think that their political candidate of choice is a good person or not. And so whether or not you believe is a good guy, that's not what we're talking about. All I'm saying is we need to caution and we need to be careful about how we view our candidates, Republican or Democrat, and to make and don't let uh, basically our wanting them to win cause us to just gloss over some wrongdoing in their life or gloss over some things that they may believe or teach that are simply wrong. Here's a couple more questions here. First one here says, can you think of a recent president that you would want your kids to emulate morally? Think about that for a minute. Me personally, uh, as old with my age, the last president I can remember, or the first president I can remember rather, is George W. Bush, and so I've been seeing all presidents from George W. Bush and up. And honestly, I would not I haven't seen a president yet since then. And when I was born, I think Bill Clinton was president. So maybe you could say Bill Clinton and up. And so uh, since Bill Clinton, I have not seen a president that I would want my kids to emulate, regardless of their political, period. From Bill Clinton up, I haven't seen one that I would want my kids to grow up and act like. They would probably we'd have to go way back, and I would have to do research on these presidents to figure out. Well, maybe this would have been somebody that could have been a role model for my kid. And what that speaks to me is basically again what it said previously is that a lot of these people they're simply not good people. They're not voted in because that they're just these great moral people. They're voted in because of the policies that they are promoting. And so again, we have to be careful that if we're voting, we do understand and again, we recognize and correctly and unbiasedly point out those flaws or the sin in that person's life. The next question: do you think political views influence Christians' judgments on the morality of political figures and or policies? Certainly, both sides. That's certainly the case. And so, if that is the case, is such a Christian viewing things carnally or spiritually? So whether or not something is right uh, is based upon whether or not the person is a Republican or a Democrat. Okay, so if I'm a Republican, if my Republican candidate does something oh, that's no big deal. But if the Democrat candidate does something, well, they need to go to jail for it. Okay. Well, if their political affiliation is basically influencing whether or not I think they're wrong or not, well, I'm viewing those things carnally. We have to view those things on a factual basis. That there's no reason other than what I want to do, and what I want to advance, rather than what's looking at right or wrong according to the Word of God. And so again, we have to avoid that. A few more questions that I wanted to think about here in regards to politics is, number one, was it the purpose of Jesus to create a perfect earthly realm? Okay. Now, this has been several weeks. It may have been years at this point, but I did a YouTube video on the subject of premillennialism, which one of the main points of premillennialism is the belief in 1,000-year actual reign on earth by Jesus. Okay. And if you want to watch that, you can find our YouTube page. It's North Columbus Church of Christ. You can find it and you can watch it there. But long story short is that Jesus has no plans to create a perfect earthly realm. He has no plans to make a perfect earth, an earth, like the same earth that we're walking on today. That is not the goal of Jesus here. Our next question is, are Christians called to form a government? You won't find that in the New Testament. Okay. You might could parse out some verses and try to build a case for why they should, but you will not find an example of the New Testament of Christians forming a government, or even Christians wanting to form a government. You will not find that. And I don't really find any evidence for the New Testament for Christians to form a government. So there's that. So in my opinion, the basis for that would be not on the scriptures, but on your own opinions. If you wanted to form, or Christians wanted to get together to form a government. Are Christians called to remove all ills from society? Are we called to, feed all the poor, heal all the sick? Frankly, we're not. Jesus said you're always going to have the poor with you. There's always going to be poor people. And so we're not going to be able to remove all ills from society. Should we help poor people? Certainly. But we have to also recognize it again that we're not called to cure every wrong in our society. Our call is ultimately to follow God, is to preach the gospel, is to preach Christ and to follow Christ, and not, setting up society after society to try to cure every little thing that we deem to be wrong in our society. John chapter 18, verse 36, it says, Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight so that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from here. Notice what Jesus says. My kingdom is not of this world. If it was, my servants would be fighting. We'd be trying to set up this kingdom right now. But my kingdom is not from here. So where is our focus? We see what Jesus' focus was. His focus was not the things of this world. He was doing the will of God. He was coming to save sinners. But his focus, again, was not on sticking around in this world, solving all of his problems here. So where is our focus? Is our focus on the things in the here and now on this world, or are we focused on spiritual things? And the spiritual things being of the utmost importance. These things on the earth are secondary importance. So again, I think this is the main goal here. regarding this subject of politics, and again, it can be a very tense subject, uneasy subject to talk about. But ultimately, I would leave you with this: that we have to be focused not on the things of the world, but on eternity. What are we going to do? What do I have to do? What would God have me to do to be pleasing to Him? Again, going back to Romans chapter 8, being of a spiritual mind rather than in the flesh, having this fleshly mind. And so I hope that's give you something to think about. Again, uh, this was not a point of talking about whether or not certain politicians are right or wrong or anything of that nature, or whether or not Christians should be involved in government in any way, shape, form, or fashion. That wasn't the point of this lesson, but it was just to give some pause and some caution as how we think about those things of the world. But hope that this has been all useful for y'all. And if you got any questions or comments, feel free to leave those here. And again, we put up all these videos on YouTube. Our YouTube page is North Columbus Church of Christ. So until next time, I hope that you all have a good day and a good rest of the week. Thanks.